First, allow me to go back to the intent of the bill. A reading of the Declaration of Policy will clearly show you its intent. There is no problem there. A further reading of the provisions will show you its further intent to crush syndicates that exploit and prey on women and children in cyberspace. The principal author of the bill has also numerous times expressed this. Such intent is truly commendable and admirable, and I have nothing but high praises for this. And I am not here to argue on the joys or ills of using sex as an expression and that this bill is violative of such right. Currently, there are numerous cases where women and children are streamed and videoed in compromising situations. There have also been numerous reports of cyber sex dens in the country catering to local and foreign customers. There are also various instances of identity theft, hacking, and other offenses committed in cyberspace. And not so long ago, there has been much controversy with regard to an alternative recreational activity of a certain celebrity doctor. However, I respectfully submit that all of these crimes are punishable under existing laws. We have laws such as the Anti-Voyeurism Act, the Anti-Human Trafficking Law, the Violence Against Women and Children Law, Anti-Child Pornography Law, the E-Commerce Law, and the Access Devices Law that already sufficiently prevent and punish these acts. Therefore, this new law can be considered a redundancy, however commendable the intent behind it may be. Indeed, it is another example of over-legislation and a product of our overly prolific Internet Congress. Now, is this a problem? Generally, no. There's nothing wrong with over-legislation per se. This new law could have had the effect of specifically pinpointing loopholes in current legislation to cover ground that was previously overlooked and to fortify and strengthen existing laws. However, these positive effects can only be had if the bill was well crafted. The bill at question is without a doubt riddled with loopholes. As a practicability speaker, let me elaborate on these loopholes. The most obvious and the favorite, of course, is Chapter 2, Section 4, Paragraph C on content-related offenses, defining cyber sex. The definition alone creates a myriad of problems. What exactly does sexual activity mean? And if you take it in its generic sense, then you expand the activities that are covered, and people exercising their constitutionally guaranteed rights can be penalized. Furthermore, what do you mean by arousal, and how do you determine if a subject is aroused? If an act arouses the officer investigating, will that be sufficient to say that the act was indeed arousing? This is just too subjective. Let me continue. What do you mean by favor or consideration? Does favor here carry its common meaning? And finally, how do you view consideration? There is not a provision in the bill allowing the trace of credit card transactions, online or over-the-counter payments if that is being done in such a transaction. I have not any idea. Second loophole, what exactly is meant by due cause in Chapter 4 on enforcement and implementation? Due cause? Is there due cause for law enforcement authorities to collect computer data if the authorities find the content sufficiently arousing? Now, would this be enough to issue a warrant and the subsequent collection of computer data? It seems that this law lowers the standard for when the state can violently violate the privacy of communication and correspondence. Third, on the chapter on jurisdiction, it reads, jurisdiction shall lie if any of the elements was committed within the Philippines or committed with the use of any computer system wholly or partly situated in the country. Now, does this mean that a pornographic performer in the pornographic studio based overseas can now be held liable here in the Philippines if a Filipino subscriber subscribes to a membership to a computer system whose computer network allows access here in the Philippines? We do not see a practical and possible way of implementing this. Furthermore, the case of Gonzalez versus Congress was also cited earlier. Now, this case provides that there should not be any restraint on the liberty of freedom of expression unless there is a clear and present danger of substantive and evil that Congress has a right to prevent. This is exactly why current legislation sets a high bar for authorizing government surveillance on private communications. Let me give you concrete examples.
Okay, sorry to know your time is up.
Thank you.
AC, 2 minutes now to cross-examine him.
Mr. Speaker, does the e-commerce law speak of traffic, content, and identity data in a computer system?
No.
No. The e-commerce law pertains to another specific data, which is electronic data messages, correct?
That's correct.
Does the Consumer Act of the Philippines mention advertisement in the cyberspace?
Yes, but I see where you're leading at.
Oh, yes.
There is a tendency that the law will be
Have you seen
redundant,
the
but
word
it does not make it
cyberspace or
void.
internet in under the Commercial Act of the Philippines?
I'm sorry again, please.
Is the Commercial Act of the Philippines contains the term cyberspace in an advertisement?
I believe not.
Okay. In the absence of this bill, do our current laws define what is identity data, current content data, and traffic data?
No, it does not.
Oh, it does not, because those data pertains to the internet. So we cannot determine which court to file if we cannot determine this content, traffic, and identity data, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so our laws are insufficient.
No.
Okay,
not
next
necessarily.
question, Mr. Speaker. Traffic data, you know what traffic data are?
Yes.
Traffic data are open to the public, correct?
Yes.
Any person can look into a traffic data.
Not necessarily.
Do you know the freewares that allows you to see traffic data?
No.
You're not very well versed, Mr. Speaker. How about under Section 9, the DOJ must first secure a court warrant before they can look into content and identity data, correct?
But that was what was pointed out earlier.
Is the requirement
that
of a court warrant the same as a requirement of a search warrant?
Yes.
Oh my, Mr. Speaker, you did not read the law very well. Do this provision limit the power of the authorities to search computer data?
I'm sorry again?
Do this requirement court warrant limit the power of the authorities to search into a computer data?
Yes, it does.
So it is a limitation to the power of the government.
Okay.
No.
Cross-examination period is over. AC 4 minutes now to rebut Dino and advance your argument on the practicability of passing the cybercrime bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will be discussing why it is impractical to declare Senate Bill 2796 as unconstitutional because first, it already provides a mechanism, safeguard mechanism, to prevent arbitrary seizure of content and identity data. And next, that this bill establishes the legal framework of respect to cybercrimes in its jurisdiction and collection of evidence. But first, let me rebut the arguments of the affirmative side. We must go back to the spirit of the issue on whether or not the state can exercise its police power to deter cybercrimes and whether or not there are valid safeguards infused in this bill to protect our right to privacy and our freedom of expression. That is how we determine the constitutionality of a would-be law and not by piecemeal speculations. Now let me proceed first with my arguments. First of all, the bill states that the authorities can look into content and identity data. This data, as the term implies, contains our messages in our emails, our rants in our Facebook, and our exact IP address. Under Section 9 of the bill, the authorities can only search in this data when they have a court warrant, and such court warrant shall only be issued upon proof of probable cause. Thus, the authorities can only read our email if the court is convinced that there is truly a genuine and substantial reason behind such access. This bill remarkably protects content and identity data because it sees a practical need to preserve its privacy and in furtherance of our freedom of expression. If the NBI looks into your email without a search or without a court warrant, then they shall be penalized under Article 128 of the Revised Penal Code, which will make them liable for imprisonment or prison correctional. Thus, the fear of arbitrary exercise of power of the government is obliterated by this dependent.
Before that warrant is applied for, under the bill, NBI can already order the ISP to record and keep all the content for a limited period of time. Am I correct?
Yes,
You don't see any problem with that.
no, Your Honor, because to determine whether the police power exercise is constitutional law, whether there is a valid limitation prescribed within the law, and under that section, the valid reasonable limitation, if there is a need to keep the integrity of the data, if there is such need to keep the integrity of the data, then that is the limitation. The police cannot arbitrarily just preserve the data. There must be a need to protect its integrity. That is the limitation. So to continue, the fear of arbitrary exercise of power is obliterated by the independent judicial intervention through court warrants. Next, there have been several court cases with respect to cybercrimes. However, they were dismissed because we have no laws. So even though there is a blatant wrong committed against an innocent individual, they cannot find redress in the courts. Under this bill, Section 4 establishes what are cybercrimes, and Chapter 5 discusses the jurisdiction of the courts.
Your Honor, what is your working definition of the right to privacy?
The right to privacy, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, is that the person must be protected in his communication and these other effects, whether it's by mail or by messages, and that the state can only intervene to such communication if there is compelling state reason, such as a cybercrime. So to continue, since this law establishes what are the jurisdictions of the courts, then the victims can now take the first step into rectifying the wrongdoings that were done to them.
Okay, time's
It is
up,
now
AC.
high time that
Sorry,
we-
AC. That's it. That's all the time we have. Dino, you have 2 minutes now to cross-examine.
Alright. A warrant is needed to collect contact data.
Yes.
Before a warrant, you need to determine due cause.
Three cause actually, Mr. Speaker.
Due cause.
Three cause.
What do you mean?
Content data.
Whatever
Traffic
you
data.
want to call it.
Due cause. Content data.
Okay,
Court
to
warrant.
continue. Alright. Are you aware of the existence of a certain Budapest Convention?
Oh, yes.
Alright. Is the Philippines a signatory of this convention?
Not yet.
Alright. Does this convention, however, require signatory states to implement certain procedural mechanisms within
Yes.
their
But
laws?
it does not also state that if you are not a signatory,
Alright,
then
you've already
you cannot
answered the
follow it.
question. Are you aware of the offenses defined in the convention?
Yes.
Alright. Are you aware that the convention does not mention cybersex as a crime?
Yes.
Therefore, can you say that our current legislation is an expansion of this basis, which is the Budapest
In the
Convention?
first place, Mr. Speaker, are we a signatory to the Budapest Convention?
To continue, are you aware of the problems encountered by countries in ratifying the convention?
Probably.
Alright, my point is that even other jurisdictions have had problems in ratifying the convention because it runs the risk of contradicting constitutionally protected rights. So even though we are not a signatory to the Budapest Convention, we've also encountered a difficulty in reconciling this bill, which is based on the Budapest Convention, with our own constitution.
I've lost track, Mr. Speaker. What's the question?
Sorry, in putting the person's right to privacy, is it a violation of the right?
It depends. If there is reasonable regulation, then there is no violation.
If data is stored, can the secrets be in danger of revelation?
That is mere speculation, Mr. Speaker.
Therefore, it is a violation of the person's privacy.
I just said that it's
Right,
a mere
privacy.
speculation, and the ISP providers have their own code of ethics.
Okay, Dino, AC, your
Do you
time is
trust the
up.
police for this?
Of course.
Dino,
Thank
sorry,
you.
that's all the time we have now. Thank you all very much, guys. May we now invite both sides to cross the house as our judges tally the scores. Square Off, the CBC Law Debate will return after these messages.